Hello, everyone. This is the Fitchburg Municipal Airport Commission meeting. It's March 16th, 2022, 6:02 p.m. Thank you for coming. I'd like to introduce the members, commission members in attendance. David Genesi to my far right, myself, the chair, Clayton Raymond, co-chair Richard Liberatore, and Commissioner Beth Walsh. Also, here seated to my right is Airport Manager Peter Kettle, and members in attendance is Matt Karen and Jackie Marks from Gale Associates, and we also have Deb Silver from the Airport Assistant Manager, and also via Zoom, Richard Gersh is attending. I don't know if he's going to speak tonight, but he's from the FPA down at the Fitchburg Airport. Thank you all for coming. Mary Jo Bohart is also here from the Development Committee. Thank you, Mary, for coming. I want to thank everybody for agreeing to the third Wednesday of the month for the meeting. I know it is a wrinkle, but it's helped out the other commissioners' hearings here at the administrative building, and I appreciate it. So let's get started. Action items from previous month's minutes. I do not have we don't have last month's minutes, but are there any action items that anybody would like to go over at this point? Let me know. That we may not cover in the old items.
They'll be covered.
They will be covered, yeah. Item 2, correspondence to the commission. I did not receive anything directly. Peter, did you?
Nothing.
Item 3, Gale, review of ongoing work. Gale Associates. Take it away.
Thank you so much. So I'll just jump right in. Jacqueline Marks with Gale Associates. We are currently administering the Airport Master Plan project, and then also on the agenda, the Environmental Assessment Project, and then we have some other items. So I'll go through the update and then also have a presentation of the alternatives that we started discussing at last month's meeting. So, as you all know, we went through the Chapter 5 Facility Requirements chapter. That is now up and available on the city airport's website for review and comment. We're still waiting on some determination from FAA with respect to those utility poles on Crawford Street. Those have been submitted through OEAAA with a request for determination of required action, so whether to light those poles or what other mitigation measures might be necessary, to address those. So as I said, this evening we'll be going over Chapter 6, the development and evaluation of alternatives. So that's where we take all of the recommendations made in Chapter 5, and we propose different ways that projects can be implemented, where facilities could go, and then we evaluate the impacts of those different facilities. So once the alternatives have been selected, Gale can revise Chapter 6 to include the Commission's recommendations, and then that can be forwarded over to FAA for review. So tonight we'll be requesting first that the Commission vote to select preferred alternatives, and then second that the Commission vote to allow Gale Associates to forward that Chapter 6 over to FAA and Mass DOT for review and comment pending those additions. Any questions on the master plan project so far? Okay, so just moving on to the environmental assessment. So the environmental assessment will review the projects that are selected as part of the master plan for the accordance with the National Environmental Policy Act. So that's the next required step as the part of this process to vet everything through the environmental portion. So a scoping meeting for that project is scheduled tomorrow morning at 9. Scope of work is attached, a draft scope of work is attached to the back of your update this evening. Just for informational purposes, we're not going to go over that tonight, but certainly if you have any questions and as revisions are made, we will update the commission with any items that change as a result of that scoping meeting. So just as a quick reminder, the grant application deadline for the environmental assessment is April 11th, so time is really going to be of the essence here with respect to, getting the scope of work revised and then also sending out the scope of work for an independent fee estimate. So we'll be really looking to turn this around very, very quickly, and we'll request that, the commission attend, or representatives of the airport attend the scoping meeting tomorrow, and then solicit as soon as possible following that meeting an independent fee estimate, so we can make that April 11th deadline. Any questions on that?
I want to clarify the
Sure.
environmental assessment, wildlife hazard assessment. That is separate from our airport master plan, yes?
Correct, it's a separate project.
But it's mentioned in the airport master plan as something that needs to be done in the next few years, right?
That is right, yes.
Okay.
Yep,
That's all.
okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? So moving into other items, the Mass DOT pre-applications were submitted for the backup generator, modifications to the fuel tank, and then for hangar door and hangar roof replacements. There are no updates from Mass DOT at this time with respect to those projects.
I have something to say on that.
You do? Okay.
Yes, I spoke to Steve McDonald. He's the guy that's going to do the work on the Scully system and also on the truck with the self-serve fuel farm. That's what you're talking about, right?
Correct.
And he was on holiday last week down in Florida, and he's promised me by Friday he would have a cost with the scope of work ready for us on Friday.
Okay.
So we can review that. As soon as we receive it, send it over to you guys, but we can all review it for next commission meeting. Okay?
Perfect. Thank you, Peter.
One comment. So Mass DOT has no update, or they not answer their phone?
For the backup generator, if I can jump in here, Mass DOT, we're still waiting on them to complete their independent fee estimate, and that has not been completed yet to date.
Okay.
That's in Mass DOT's court. They're doing the IFE for that project.
All right.
And then, as Peter was saying, we're waiting at this point for Steve McDonald from Titan to provide a scope of work and fee.
Yeah.
And then we can submit that to Mass DOT and then get that project funded.
Okay. And then the other two, the hangar door projects, hangar 2 and 4, they're in the works, and they've been submitted, but we're no word from them yet.
That is my understanding. I think Peter probably would be able to answer that better than we can. That was more in his court.
No, that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
There's nothing yet. I believe it's the end of this month that it's got to be decided, or is it the end of June?
For them to issue the grant, I would fall, if you haven't heard from them, I would send an email to Owen asking what the status is. Because, you need delivery of this stuff and a finished product in hand by June 30th.
End of June,
So.
right.
Any other questions before we move into the presentation?
Well, maybe we could add something, Matt. If MassDOT Aeronautics doesn't come through with the ASMP grant for the roofs and the doors, it's included on the new CIP, as we discussed yesterday.
Yep.
So either way, we should be able to get it done. Now, when does the BIL, when does that end for our 2022? Is it the end of June or is it the end of December?
The BIL, what do you mean, when does it end?
The fiscal year
the
for
first- the fiscal year.
2022 for the CIP?
is October 1st is the new fiscal year for the FAA,
So it's
so,
October,
yeah, September 30th.
end of September. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Because that's important that we work within that time frame, isn't it? Because
Yeah, I think like the first rounds of so just for everyone's understanding, there's a bipartisan infrastructure law bill that's out there, and it provides, there's like $5 billion allocated towards terminal projects and air traffic control tower projects. There's another $20 billion in airport improvement grants that are going out to airports all across the country. That allocation of funding is based on some magic formula that someone at the federal government has, decided. But the airport, Fitchburg's getting $295,000 a year for the next 5 years. So in fiscal year 2022, which is what we're in right now, and I don't know when the grant application process is going to be for the bipartisan infrastructure law funding, because that has not been announced yet, but the airport will be receiving $295,000. Then in the next 4 subsequent years, it's anticipated that you're going to receive approximately another $295,000. The formula gets, they relook at the formula every single year, but the understanding is Fitchburg is going to get approximately the same amount of money. You may get a little bit more, you may get a little bit less, but that's what Peter is talking about, and that grant application, like I said, we don't know when that is yet, but as soon as it comes online, we'll be looking to, get a lot of those projects that are on the airport's wish list, applied for and hopefully funded.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah. Good.
Any other questions before you move on?
Anyone else? No, I'm good.
Okay, so we can move into the public presentation of the alternatives for the master plan. We can go through them one of 2 ways. I can go through the full presentation and then have the commission vote on each project at the end, or we can vote on them as you go, whatever your preference is.
The way I think, personally, I like to see the whole thing.
Okay.
And then vote. If everybody
Yep.
is in agreement, I'm okay.
Excellent. Okay, so I guess we'll just jump right in then. Next slide, please. Everyone should have a copy in front of them. So just an overview of what we're going to go over, purpose and objectives of Chapter 6, just a little disclaimer on permitting and cost estimates, then we'll get into the actual project alternatives. We'll take any additional questions and comments, and of course stop me as we are going along. I'm sure there'll be questions as we go through. Then we'll go through the next steps in the master plan process, and then remind everyone again where these chapters will be made available once once the draft is prepared. So next slide, please. Purpose and objectives. So Chapter 6, as I said before, is your development and evaluation of alternatives, which takes all of the information that we've learned so far in the master plan process and determines different locations and ways of implementing projects that the airport needs, so different infrastructure developments, and it outlines various impacts that are associated with those developments. Next slide, please. Permitting and cost estimates. So just a little bit of a disclaimer on permitting and cost estimates. Permitting can vary, costs can vary. So just at the time of the project is really when you determine, based on the specific project scope and where things are going and the actual amount of impacts presented by that project, you determine your permitting requirements, and then, cost estimates, of course, inflation comes into play, all those different factors, the actual size of facilities, again, determined at the time of the project, but we have provided some ballpark cost estimates for certain projects, just to give the commission an idea of what you'd be looking, or you could be looking at. Next slide, please. So we'll just jump right into the alternatives. So you have your hangar alternatives. This is hangar alternative 1. And this is basically, you'll see the second alternative is very, very similar, but this shows the potential for complete build out of hangars on the airfield. This can, of course, be constructed either in phases or as needed, or different facilities, different sizes of facilities can be constructed. You're not locked in to this specific layout. This is really just to give the commission and the public an idea of what could potentially fit in this space. But from the purview of FAA, so long as you're showing hangars in a particular area, that satisfies their needs. So this first alternative is showing basically your corporate is being kept separate from your GA development. And then if we can go to the next slide, please. Your alternative 2 is very, very similar, but your corporate is utilizing that unnamed taxiway rather than, rather than your separate taxiway access. So the next slide, this is going to show the different impacts. So basically, very, very similar with respect to the 2 alternatives. You're addressing your hangar demand by either one of these things. Really the difference is you're either separating your GA traffic from your corporate traffic or you are not. That's the ultimate decision between these two alternatives here. So you'll notice, one, the full build-out may require relocation of the ASOS, which is true of both alternatives. We list out your impervious surface addition as a result of the full build-out. And then also we have fashioned the alternative in such a way that we're avoiding any wetland impacts. So you'll see in the figures, and actually, could we go just back one slide just to show? Please, thank you so much. So we've avoided wetlands and any buffer areas as part of these alternatives, just for ease of permitting. Does anyone have any questions so far about the hangar alternatives?
Anyone?
Nope, okay, we can keep moving on. Next slide, please, this one here, yep. So land reservation, there's one alternative here. So this is reserving land for future non-aeronautical development. So this could be your solar, this could be business development, some other compatible use with the airfield that is non-aviation related. And we've designated 2 areas here, one area up by Crawford Street, and then the other area down on, to the southwest there of runway 1432. So going into the comparison, next slide, please. By reserving these areas for future aeronautical development, that opens the airport up to potential solar, potential other types of development for revenue generation, bringing more revenue into the airport. Any questions on?
How many acres is that? Do we know?
Oh goodness, I didn't.
We had this on there. I think it was, Peter, help me out, was it 14 acres up by Crawford Street?
Yes.
I think it's, 14,
total,
and then the
yeah.
lower portion is it maybe another 12 or 14 or something like that?
To the west of the runway?
Yeah.
Correct.
At the moment, it's like 17, but I think there's a potential for 35 if we get permits to go over the wetlands
All the other
and things like
wetlands,
that.
correct,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
That lower section, is that what we were planning for the solar?
Yeah.
Okay.
May I make a comment,
Of course.
please? With respect to option 1 or option 2 on the hangars? Just so that the mayor knows and Attorney Pusateri knows, in the BIL, what's it called? The
It's the bipartisan infrastructure law.
infrastructure,
funding.
thank you.
14 on
Where we
top.
get the $295,000 a year, we've actually included in the CIP for 2023, $250,000 for the utilities for the new hangars if it goes forward.
Okay.
250,000, okay?
And how much, do we know how much that's going to cost?
We don't know, but I think it's a good chunk, in all honesty, because I believe it'll come off Blueberry Lane. So, but I think whatever it is, it shows that we are willing, and, I'm sure what was missing, they would actually contribute in discussions with them, so it won't cost the city anything.
It's that second part that I'm not sure that we're going to clear through procurement on the public construction of infrastructure. So if they're gonna do that, that's where I think we got hung up, and there was some confusion last time, where we're having.
Vinnie, can everybody hear you? Sorry.
Where we're having the construction in a public facility of infrastructure, like the road, the gas, utility, and that type of stuff, that may want to be done through public funds.
Okay.
Now, they may, if they want to pay for it, that's great, they may have to pay the city, and then we put that out for a bidding process. And there's an intersection there that is very murky to me between our ability to avoid certain procurement requirements because it's aviation use,
Right.
and the public infrastructure construction rules. And that's why I always defer to our chief procurement officer.
Yeah, thank you.
Any questions on the land reservation alternatives before we move on? Okay. So moving on, next slide, please. We have two fencing alternatives, very, very similar. Both alternatives construct fencing up by the former runway 20 end. You'll see that would effectively separate your non-aeronautical area from the airfield. So that's included on both alternatives. The difference between the alternatives, and if we go to the next slide, I think, commissioners, you have both of these in front of you, but you're basically either constructing fencing that goes more along the river, or you're constructing your fencing along kind of parallel to the runway, of course outside of any safety areas that, you know, to not impact your runway safety areas.
This
and
is
all those things.
beyond what we have existing as a perimeter.
That's correct. That's correct. So it is worth noting that just due to the river and due to the runway safety areas, neither of these alternatives are fully enclosing the airfield, just because like I said, there are those safety areas that you're contending with, the river that you're contending with. So connecting those two sections of fence really just is not possible, but these are the options to enclose the airfield as much as possible.
What's the height of this fence?
We have it listed here, proposed fence as 10 feet on the
It's
plan.
10 feet here. Do we have to also, the existing perimeter fence, that has to be also FAA ruling to be 10 feet as well?
So I did include 10 feet on the plans. I know they, the wildlife hazard assessment that's coming up as
Yeah.
part of your 2022 project will address all of those items and make recommendations for, you know, for the heights of fencing and what would be the best way to, you know,
Well, the
kind of
perimeter.
prevent the wildlife from coming onto the airfield. Fencing is certainly one thing that is usually recommended for that.
Yeah, Commissioner Liberatore, if you remember, about 2 or 3 years ago, we actually got an ASMP grant to put the fencing up where the cars had been through the fence.
Yes.
And at that time, we wanted to match the existing fence, but we were told by MassDOT Aeronautics, you can't do that. So if you go along Crawford Street, you'll see you've got a fence of 6 feet, and then right next to it is a 10-foot.
Yeah.
And that 10-foot is what is going to go all the way around the airport.
Well, that's a big concern, because the fencing on Airport Road, Crawford Street's been compromised, I don't know, 40 times. So if we're going to spend all this money to replace a perimeter fencing more on the street side, because the residents between Pittsburgh, Leominster, and all of us love to just crash into it, then, you know, along with the fencing, should be another deterrent to say, okay, you're going to go through a guardrail before you go through the fence. I mean, it's Peter will tell you, I mean, for the short time that he's been manager, I mean, the fence has been compromised at least 11 times.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I haven't driven by the fencing on Crawford Street ever and not see a hole in it. So it's like, if we're going to be spending this amount of money and put an elaborate fence, how am I going to wear this? Because we know there's an existing problem, would that be part of the project to maybe put a buffer zone or some kind of structure before the fencing?
Certainly worth the discussion. I don't know that it's eligible for AIP funding. I would say that it's probably not eligible for airport improvement program funding, but it's worth the discussion to see if it can squeeze something like that in. I mean, on one hand, you could argue it protects a federal investment.
That's how I'm looking at it, because
Yeah.
it's an existing problem,
Yep.
you know, and history shows that that fence is always being compromised. A certain section, not the entire length of the street roadway, but there is one certain, maybe half a mile, that's always compromised.
Yeah, when that project comes up, we'll be certain to see if we can push the bounds a little bit for you.
Yeah, and that is, just so you know, Rich, that is included in the facility requirements chapter. We did note that, so that is documented in
And
the
that
master plan.
fence too, the exterior fence of the airport property is also going to be a 10-foot?
Yes.
That would be the goal, yeah. And
Yes.
coming out of the
That's
wildlife
something-
hazard assessment, that would be the goal, would be
Okay.
to make all the fencing match and make it at 10 feet.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you.
Great,
May I additionally comment, please?
of course.
It's funny that you actually brought that up this evening, because if you remember, approximately 2 years ago, we actually went onto that subject and we discussed Jersey barriers, which the attorney didn't like. We discussed many things, and the outcome of that was that rumble strips would do it, because there's many, many airports around North America that have rumble strips outside them. And this evening, when Nick Erickson was here at the Wastewater Commission meeting, I actually reminded him that he was going to come back with pricing, and he said, oh yes, he's going to get new pricing now for rumble strips all the way down, and it would be between $10,000 to $15,000, which is that would stop it, because as soon as people hit that rumble strip,
Yeah, yeah.
it's going to turn them inside and not outside. So,
Yeah.
okay, so it's
Attorney Butera, would you like to speak?
Peter said it well, and maybe we will look at other traffic calming type of signals that try to keep drivers alert to and not looking at their phones while they're missing that S-turn. And just reiterating the point for all of us, we certainly don't want an obstacle. We would rather have a damaged fence and maybe some humiliated drivers than a couple of kids driving down that road, texting and then driving into a Jersey barrier.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
We don't want anybody hurt.
Yeah.
So the fencing could change. Do you think that fence could be on the bottom of the banking?
I'm sorry,
On the bottom of the hill?
on the bottom of the hill?
It's possible. Yeah, you mean away from Crawford Street, all the way down the hill,
Yeah.
but still staying on airport property?
I think the cost might double.
You think the cost
I do.
would double?
Because it's muddy down there, it's horrible, there's trees, there's everything down there. And to get equipment down there to actually put the holes in for the posts and everything, I think it'd double the cost, personally.
Something to consider, I suppose. I know the FAA doesn't like you to park near the fence on an airport, because they don't want you to be able to park your car and jump over the fence. So they may not like the
Lasers.
bank right behind the fence either,
Laser
but
beams on there.
I think it's something we should.
We can explore a variety of
Yeah.
options for it.
Yeah. And really, I guess, just to clarify, so the fencing alternatives that we're reviewing this evening are for additional fencing, like in addition to what the airport currently has. So any existing fencing that you have would be more considered, maintenance, reconstruction type of cost. And really, we're evaluating tonight just the pink segments of fencing. Just wanted to make that clear.
Oh, okay.
So when we get into your recommendations, the next chapter will be your schedule of improvements.
Yeah.
And those sorts of, fixing different areas of fence and things like that will all come into the schedule of improvements, but these are really new developments or new improvements that are needed,
Okay. Thank you.
just so when you're seeing the costs and things like that. So next slide, please.
Yes.
So really, you're looking at, for your alternative one, the differences here are really a little bit of additional fencing for your alternative one by going more along the river there, a little bit of added costs, and then potential, a little bit more temporary wetland impacts from tree clearing, but very, very, very similar alternatives. So it's really a matter of whether the commission would like to kind of consider for future non-aeronautical development. Do you want to separate that potential solar development, that non-aeronautical development from the rest of the airfield, or do you want to have that within the fence? Any questions?
So when we vote tonight, we're going to be voting on alternative 1s and 2s for hangar placement, and alternative 1s and 2s for fences, so forth and so on.
And then, well, you could vote the no action as well. It's considered an option.
Yeah, okay.
But yes, it would be no action 1 or 2, or no action and 1.
Thank you.
All right. Want to keep moving on? Is there any other questions on the fencing? Okay. So next slide, please. So this is your restaurant alternative, and this is really just reserving areas of land or areas in the terminal area for a restaurant, and then potential expansion of your parking facility. So that's all this is doing, is potentially expanding that and just locating that area. This area would give you, a restaurant like we've discussed in the past, that would be giving patrons a view of the airfield, and then, of course, taking into account that, you're going to have additional patrons, employees coming in and needing to park their vehicles. So next slide, please, is your comparison. So really, you're providing the community with a desirable amenity on the airfield. I know it's quite desirable for pilots to come in and, land and have a meal. Also very attractive for the public to be able to come and look at the airport and view the planes land while they're eating. So definitely bring additional revenue into the city and, have economic impacts in that way. Any questions about the restaurant? Okay, next slide, please. So this is your easement alternative. So if you recall, as part of Chapter 5, the facility requirements, an aeronautical study was done of obstructions that were in the airport's approaches, and these are items that have since grown since the previous projects were pursued. So there are a couple of small areas of trees that are on airport property you see on the 3-2 end, but there are a couple of properties with that are off airport that do contain some vegetation that would need to be removed. So if we move on to the next slide, the impacts to aircraft operations. So you're maintaining a clear 20-to-1 obstacle clearance surface, and that allows the airport to retain its night operations, and then it also prevents the airport from potentially having to further displace the threshold due to those obstructions in that surface. If you notice on the plan, there are also a couple of areas of trees that are on rights of way. So we would have to, as a part of this project, coordinate some agreements with the town to remove those trees, and then the easements are proposed over 3 parcels.
Okay, so I have some questions.
Sure.
You're saying we do not have aviation easements on some of these properties that have popped up?
Correct. Could we please go back one slide?
Yeah, the ones in blue.
Yep, so the parcels in blue do not have aviation easements. And again, the previous survey that was done, I mean, many years ago at this point, these trees have just grown up, and that is, unfortunately what happens at times. So just wanted to evaluate these as part of the master plan, bring it to everyone's attention, and, plan for the future to get these things removed.
So we have to readdress that with removal of the trees?
Correct.
Correct.
Do we have to acquire an easement to be in good standing with?
Not necessarily. You could, There's a business out there, you could go and work and coordinate with them and do the tree clearing at your own expense.
Yeah.
The only reason why we say abrogation easements is because if you want federal participation in the removal of those trees, you need that easement in perpetuity. That's the FAA. I mean, in an ideal situation, the FAA would want you to go out and get easements over every single property under your approach surface.
Right.
It's not feasible or realistic. In this case, there are some things that have popped up since we've done easement projects back in 2013, 14, 15. But you do not necessarily need to get abrogation easements. My recommendation for master plan purposes, for your airport layout plan, would be to approve, easement alternative 1, because that gives you the ability to pursue abrogation easements, but it doesn't necessarily hold your feet to the fire to acquire easements. You can
Looks like
negotiate that
A
stuff.
large part of it is on airport property.
Most of the obstructions, most of the obstructions, as you can see, are close in on the runway 32 end. That's pretty typical. The approach surface is far lower at that portion of the approach than it is as you get into the city of Leominster.
Right.
So some stuff just happens to pop up. It could be bushes, shrubs, stuff like that.
Well, I would have
I
to-
know the airport has equipment to maintain and keep that stuff low. Would recommend getting out there and just brush hogging it or, taking that stuff down.
Yeah, I'm thinking the one on the far right has got to be either pretty tall or up on a big hill, but that's pretty far from the approach, from the numbers.
You're talking 2 and 3?
Yes.
Yeah, but you can see all the orange on this thing. Those are previously acquired abrogation easements.
The orange, yeah.
Yellowish, orange. I'm
Yeah.
somewhat shade blind. Forgive me.
Okay.
How does this affect the RNAV LPV?
In this case, I don't know that those particular trees do, because we talked about this before in the past, Peter. When Flight Procedures publishes an approach, they're looking at things through somewhat of a different lens than the FAA advisory circular. But when they publish an approach, they do themselves look for, obstructions, whether it be trees, it could be terrain, it could be a building, pole, something like that. And all of that gets factored into, the minimums that they set for an airport and how they publish that approach.
Right.
So-
The reason I say that is because we got information on Monday of this week that the new RNAV LPV is going to be issued on the 24th of March.
Yeah.
And the minimums have dropped by 200 feet, which is enormous
Great.
for us, absolutely enormous. So it's really brilliant news for the people who want to build the hangars as well. So everything's going in the right direction.
And just note, you're talking about Carl Newton at FAA Flight Procedures, I presume. He's very much aware of
Right.
these plans and these obstructions, so he's taken that into consideration. So that's
Brilliant.
great that he's been able to drop it by 200 feet. That's
Yeah.
great news.
Brilliant, thank you.
Any other questions on these alternatives before we move on?
We can move along.
Let's move on. All right. Next slide, I think actually one more, please. Thank you. So this is your relocation of the ASOS, and this project is, presuming there is a full build-out of any of those hangar alternatives. As you recall, they're right in the area of the airport's current ASOS. So what we've done here is we've just cited what presumably would be the best location, given the different restricted surfaces surrounding the ASOS. There are critical areas that have to be protected due to the wind sensor and other monitoring equipment that need to be maintained clear of obstructions. So this was really, at the time of the project, if it's relocated, it'll have to be further, surveyed and evaluated, but just at, planning level purposes, this would be a good location potentially for relocating that ASOS. So next slide. Basically, again, just planning for the future. If the airport does select the full build-out hangar alternative to make sure that the ASOS remains operational and that weather data is available at the airport. Any questions?
No?
Is that the last one with your question mark on it?
Yes, the next one is.
May I, forgive me,
Yeah, don't,
may we go back 4 slides, please?
yep.
That's the one. Attorney Pusateri, if you look at that, that actually lists the height of their aeroplane clearances as they come in to an airport. And I believe what we should be doing is giving that to Mark Barbadora, because he's the one that looks at the heights of buildings going up, and this tells him exactly where he cannot build to what height. So he wouldn't get into trouble by passing anything on the planning side.
So Peter, what you're suggesting is if anyone had a design on building something?
Yeah.
Yes,
The height
they
limit?
couldn't do it. The planning authority could say, no, you can't do that,
Yeah, okay, good,
okay?
yeah.
You know, I don't mind giving him this, but I think primarily, I don't know how to tag in the system. How do we tag specific lots that could possibly be triggered by this analysis?
Right, well, that in fact is Leominster, but we've got exactly the same for Fitchburg. I asked Jackie last week to get it, and I've got it.
We could add it to
Absolutely.
the permit system, then
Absolutely.
automatic trigger would go to your office
Yeah,
for approval.
yeah, I think it's a great tool.
So,
Thank you.
how does Leominster know?
We'll have to tell Leominster City Council as well. They don't at the moment, and neither does Mark Barbadora. I've given him something similar to this in the past, but it's not been applied yet, and I believe it needs to be applied yesterday
Yes.
It's a good idea.
for anybody, you know, considering building a new property, building a new building.
So we have the same grid for the 1-4 end, you're
We
saying?
do, yes. Yes.
But there were no obstructions on 1-4 end?
There, on airport property, there are.
Oh.
But again, when we're talking about evaluating alternatives, it's new projects that were not, you know, previously addressed. So anything on airport property, those obstruction removal on airport property would be a maintenance activity, so you
Yeah.
wouldn't evaluate it through an alternative.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Brilliant job, Jackie, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? We can move on, I guess, back to the, or forward, I suppose, to the next step slide. Yes, this one here. So, as I said before, next step will be your schedule of improvements after the alternatives have been determined, and that just prioritizes your goals, your short-term projects in the next 5 years, mid-range projects in the next 10 years, and then long-term projects over 20 years. There's also a chapter, as required by FAA, on airport recycling and how the airport's recycling program fits in with the overall city recycling program. That has been drafted. It's a very short chapter. It'll be provided at an upcoming meeting for review. And then, of course, there's the airport layout plan, which is the graphical representation of all of these projects on one plan. So you have all of your ultimate developments on a single plan, and you also have, there are other plan sheets that are included as part of that set as well. You have the existing facilities plan that as the airport is today. You also have some obstruction plans, your airspace plans, things like that, that are all part of the airport layout plan set. So at a future meeting, we will publicly present the airport layout plan and then chapters 7 and 8. And then that basically brings us through to the end of the master plan process, and we can begin closeout. Just wanted to note again, I think I have said this before, but just for the public's edification, that just because the Airport Commission votes to approve an alternative during tonight's meeting, that does not commit the city or the state or the FAA to funding a particular project. This is just the ultimate goal. If the airport could have every single thing on its wish list over the next 20 years, this is what the airport would look like. So just to clarify that. And then next slide is just going to give the public that link again to where the master plan chapters are available. So chapters 1 through 5, thank you very much, Deb, are all up on the website today. Chapter 6, once we've selected alternatives and, or once the commission has selected alternatives and the chapter's been revised to reflect those selections, we will of course then provide that chapter for upload so that the public can review it and comment on it and things like that.
That's good.
Any questions, concerns before we move into the voting on the selected alternatives?
I want clarity on right now, the airport lacks property rights to clear 20-to-1 OCS to runway 32.
Correct.
Was the 20-to-1 OCS our goal originally? And now we're finding out after they've actually plotted it out that it had changed or not?
I'm not sure I understand.
Was the 20-to-1 the goal 4 years ago?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So the only thing that changed is they came in and actually measured it and found trees that were probably higher than they were.
Yeah, so the goal 4 years ago was to clear the 20-to-1. 4 years ago, we cleared the 20-to-1.
Yes.
It was cleared.
Okay.
We've revisited through another obstruction analysis as part of the master plan.
Yes.
And stuff has since grown into the surface.
Okay,
Yep.
Right.
thank you.
Yep.
How often is that updated?
The obstruction analysis doesn't, truthfully, it doesn't happen very often. It just happens that the commission went through a navigation easement project. Because at the time, the FAA and Mass DOT were aware of obstructions. I mean, it was pretty clear. Flight procedures had flagged obstructions and notified FAA New England region. So FAA New England region said to Fitchburg, you need to address your safety projects before we fund anything else, particularly the reconstruction of a runway. They won't go and reconstruct a runway or rehab a runway until you address those safety projects. So at that time, we undertook a navigation easement project, went and cleared everything. It was good. It was clear 20-to-1. We happened to come back and do a master plan X number of years later. As part of this, we wanted to revisit that because your airport layout plan actually requires that you update your Part 77 pages. Not to get too technical, but that shows obstructions and everything around the airport. It shows hills, terrains, towers, and stuff like that. And as part of that process, we got the data back and we were like, great. There's more stuff that has since grown into the surface. I can't tell you when the next time we'll do an aeronautical survey will be after this master plan project.
We're going to have to address the vegetation growth down the road.
At some point, it's going to need to be addressed. Right now, the good news is with flight procedures in your approach, in your LPV approach, everything is being published with those obstructions known. If anything, removing those obstructions would probably only seek to enhance the type of visibility minimums at the airport, potentially.
Got it. Thank you.
So we don't have to acquire easements, like you said.
No, I would suggest and strongly suggest that you mitigate for the obstructions, but that doesn't need to be done in the form of a navigation easement, no.
Thank you. Anyone else? That's a lot of information. I have a question, a comment for Peter. The hangar alternatives, 1 and 2, basically kind of separates corporate or jets from general aviation. I mean, I would like to see jets or corporate separate than the general aviation, and I just like everybody's opinion on that, and Peter in particular.
I agree 100%.
Is that the norm?
Whether it's the norm or not, it's the most sense version, definitely.
That's how I'm seeing that.
Yeah.
So too.
But it's just a little more costly because we're not sharing a taxiway.
May I comment, Mr. Chairman? And just say that we've presented to the commission a concept. So this is conceptual in nature. When it comes time for these private hangar developers to construct, or even if the city undertakes a hangar development project of its own, that's really when you start getting into the nitty-gritty of design and you start looking at utilities, and this certainly could change. But just as a concept to keep GA traffic away from corporate traffic, we've given you what we believe is a desirable layout with access to all of the different hangars, and that includes these different taxiways and taxi lanes. That is definitely subject to change. This is not like casting concrete, this type of layout, that is.
That approach for the corporate hangars isn't all that much more when you really look at it from alternative 1 to alternative 2.
Right, but
But it
alternative
is a
two
little bit-
already, that taxiway already exists.
Right, right. So you're going to construct hangar systems with its own little taxiway. And again,
Yeah, I
it's
mean, I
keeping
just-
the big fish away from the little fish.
I suppose.
There you go. Yep.
No one gets run over.
There you go.
I like it.
And one other question. The non-aviation use,
Yes.
can this grow, or can this shrink, or can this be changed?
What do you mean by changed? It can definitely shrink, it can grow. You don't need to utilize, so I think we said during this meeting, it was like 14 acres approximately up by Crawford Street.
Yes.
You don't necessarily need to include all of that as non-aeronautical use if you're looking to shrink it. I don't know that you could really grow it too much more, because then you'd start encroaching on some of the hangars and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there something else you'd be interested in seeing, other than this type of layout?
I mean, it's tough to view, because when you're driving down Crawford Street, it looks like you have a bunch of flat land, but then again, the hill goes down rather quickly, so
Big
it
time.
would be tough to
Yep.
develop that area. So, I mean, I'm going to take your word for it that this is the space that's available, and I'm okay with that. It just... All right.
Okay.
Again, a lot of information here. We're going to have to take some votes, and if anybody has any more questions, please. Mary Jo?
I believe that it has already been said by the presenters from Gale, but I just wanted to make sure that it was clear for me. In the concepts, say for the hangars, alternatives 1 and 2, as real development of those hangars occurs, it may or may not lay out exactly as you all have it, so they are conceptual. Okay, okay. I wasn't sure. I think you've explained to us in prior meetings, the need for that conceptual layout stems from FAA approval or MassDOT approval of the entire master plan. This is the vision. Is that?
In order for any of the projects that the airport wishes to undertake using federal dollars, those projects need to be reflected on the airport layout plan. And so that's what we're doing, and that's why they're conceptual only, and we're not being paid to design this and
Sure.
and all that stuff.
So when the commissioners choose one alternative versus the other, if as time goes on, based on the market demand or whatever, they migrate back to what, in essence, was the first alternative, even though they voted on the second one at a meeting like this, that's not going to preclude their flexibility.
Correct.
Okay, that's, okay.
Thank you, Mary Jo. Anyone else? Okay. I'm probably going to need your help to chop this up as to what motions you'd like to see.
Sure, so I think it might just be easiest to separate it by the type of development, so we could start with the hangars and then move on to subsequent types of projects. Would that work?
Yeah, that works for me. Thank
Okay,
you.
perfect. So I suppose the vote would be, and I'll record the results, but I suppose the vote would be to vote for hangar alternative. You'd vote no action, alternative 1, or alternative 2.
Okay. All right, so let's take a motion to accept hangar alternative 1, or accept hangar alternative 2, or you said that there's
Could I simplify
no
this?
vote is possible.
Could I simplify this? Maybe amongst yourselves, discuss which one you like. Do you like no action? Do you guys like alternative one, or do you like alternative two? Once you have a consensus, then make a motion to approve one of those
Okay.
three alternatives?
All right.
Rather than
That's-
three separate motions to deny and then come back in and...
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, I think collectively we liked alternative one.
I'm sorry?
I think collectively we liked alternative one, based on previous conversations.
Well, yeah, well, let's throw it out there right now. I personally would like separation between jets and general aviation. I know jet pilots like separation. So I am also a yes on alternative one for hangar placement. Does everybody agree with that, or is there any other,
Yeah.
I think looking at the nodding heads, I would make a motion to accept hangar alternative one.
I would second that motion.
Okay, so to be clear, they're not motions yet, we're trying to get a collective, right?
No, I would now, I heard a motion on the floor, I heard a second. I would now, amongst
All right.
yourselves, vote and approve which alternative one.
Okay, so we're going to do this in separate motions, I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm sorry, the motion came from
Me.
Beth. Was there a second on the floor?
Yeah, David?
David?
Yep.
David? Let's vote on that. I'm a yes,
Aye.
I accept.
Alternative one.
That's a 4-0 vote on alternative one hangar placements.
Perfect. So moving on, I'll try to move it along quickly. So your land reservation, it's either no action or alternative one, which is to reserve the 2 areas for non-aviation use.
I personally think there's room for non-aviation use on the airport. I can't imagine us ever needing all that space, and I believe that 14 acres is so high that I don't even know that we could taxi aircraft up into that area. So, and the other side, the 17 acres on the south side or west side, is locked in by water and the airport runway. So I'm in favor of reserving that land for non-aviation use. I'm going to motion to accept land reservation alternative one.
I'll second that.
And could we have a vote on that? If, on
Aye.
yes?
Aye.
It's a 4-0.
Okay, so moving on to your fence alternatives. So you have your no action alternative, you have alternative one that kind of follows the line of the river, and alternative two that's the fencing that's more parallel to runway 1432.
So if I make my opinion known, I personally, I'm in favor of having the fence not go to the river, just because of expense, and I don't see the need to go all that way. What was the advantage of going to the river? Was that clear?
So it basically, so if you recall the non-aviation area, potential solar, you would basically be voting to either kind of enclose that non-aeronautical area into the airport property area, or you'd separate that non-aviation area.
I'm not sure, but I think if the solar farm went on that south side, that locked-in area, that might have to get a fence. I think the security of the airport with the fence following the river, initially when we talked about this years ago, that was suggested. Keeping the wildlife kind of stay there at the river site and not giving them more of an approach to come onto the flatlands of the airport. So I recommend that we go with the
Alternative one, I like that one better. I think there's more security there.
May I ask a question?
You sure?
Yes, you
Nothing
can.
to do with voting, but at the airports where, like up in Maine, where you have this massive solar farm, is that solar farm separate from the air side of the runway? Is there a fence between the two?
I believe it is all fully fenced in via airport, I believe.
So,
Keep in mind, that is definitely different than this type of layout because there's different pockets of that solar too. So, but I believe it's all within the same fence.
so
I
in order
believe.
to satisfy the FAA regulations or requirements, would it need a combination of one and two?
It's possible that the airport could do the fencing parallel with runway 1432, and then when solar is constructed, presumably by a private developer, that also may be fenced in
Right.
as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Do you mow over there, Peter?
Yeah,
You do.
yes. Not the whole way, but we do mow over there. At the moment, it's a little bit of a mess since, you know, it was all seeded and it's been washed away through the winter, etc., but it will be mowed.
So fence alternative 1 and 2, as far as the Crawford Street side, it doesn't change.
No.
Correct.
Okay.
But in all honesty, I would guess that whoever went up there, if they took the whole lot or it was separated, then they'd want their own fence along Crawford Street as well. So
Yeah.
it's virtually the same, isn't it? Because
Matt,
it'll
have you
be separate
fencing
from
in
the airport and it'll also be separate from
The
Crawford Street.
wetlands?
Some of the wetlands do come back into the fence line, yes.
On fence alternative one, you've got the red circles. I believe that is the wetland.
Those red circles are the buffers around the wetlands, and there is a 200 riverfront buffer for the Nashua River, which is why that fence is located. It's all 200 feet from the riverfront.
Oh, it is.
Yep.
So the animals can play there, too,
If you're
away.
looking maybe for some guidance on this, my suggestion, my recommendation would be you go for more because it's easier to scale back than it is to be like, hey, we actually wanted more than we're showing on the airport layout plan. Again, you're showing conceptual layout, not necessarily cast in stone.
Yeah.
I think it's easier to back off than it is to try and grab more later on.
You have more control, whether you maintain the vegetation or the rights of it and everything. Yeah. I know what you're saying.
Okay. Looking for a motion.
Make a motion, we go with alternative one.
Second.
Can we have a vote?
Aye.
Alternative 1.
Perfect. So then moving on to the restaurant alternative, you're essentially either designating an area for your restaurant and future parking or no action, which would be no designation of that area.
Just a quick question I wanted to ask earlier. These two parking areas, it's not one or the other? It's both? Can be both?
Could be both.
Could be
Yeah,
both?
yep.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And it doesn't have to be. It's just, you know, potential areas to expand parking.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking with a restaurant and an expanding airport, you know, you may need more than just the one yellow block, yeah.
And we talked about the placement of that building close to the fencing so they could see the runway, adjacent to the administration building. So I think the setup, the site spot is good. And again, the parking area can be tweaked any way it needs to be. And I know we have the existing vault there, which again would open up a little bit more land, but
Yeah, the existing vault's not in that parking area, yeah.
do you have an estimate of how many cars in that spot? Do you put it together? Just out of curiosity? 10 cars, 20 cars?
Based on the aerial image, I would say probably, I don't maybe like 20,
15 or 20?
15 or 20.
Just in that
I mean, we
square
have
area.
the parking at the administration building. You know, if there's an overflow, I mean, if this thing blew up to be the biggest thing, you know,
Correct.
but,
Yeah, so I'm certainly in favor of a restaurant and space
too.
for it. I absolutely agree it needs to be on a airport master plan. And I think that basically we don't really have we either have a no restaurant alternative or an alternative, right? So
Yes.
I motion to include the restaurant alternative number 1.
Second.
Can we have a vote, please?
I-
4.
Okay, so moving on to the easement alternatives, so you have your no action, so no acquisition of easements on those 3 parcels where we've identified you're obstructing vegetation, or you vote to acquire the easements.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. If we go to that, the far right, that tree is, could be 100 feet tall. You're saying without easement, we're not going to get federal money to take that tree down?
Correct.
Correct.
We're on our own
Yes.
That is correct.
without the easement. Does everybody understand that?
Yep.
I mean, I'm not in favor of going to get more easements. That was painful, if you will. But I want to be in compliance with the 20-to-1 OCS, so.
Yep.
But you're saying we're not closing the door to the possibility. We're just trying to put it in this
Right.
airport master plan as
Correct.
we're not
Correct.
seeking more easement,
You're
navigation easement.
correct. You're not necessarily committing to, certainly going after the easements. Like Matt said, you could,
Yeah.
coordinate with the property owner
Yeah.
to have get the trees
Yeah, yeah.
removed.
But this gives us
But
the
this gives us-
opportunity to do that
Yeah.
if we have to at
Yes.
some point.
That's correct.
Okay, I will make a motion to not seek alternative 1 to acquire easements. I would just keep things the way they are, and so I motion a no action on alternative easement.
Don't know that.
What is this called?
I don't know that I would do that.
Let me see what this,
Easement alternative.
Go for easement 1.
and then
We should, I think we should vote for alternative 1, and then it gives us the opportunity to do that in the future if we want to, but it doesn't require us to do that. If we vote to do no action, then we have no alternative in the future. It shuts us down.
how did I miss that?
I don't know.
That's why there's 4 of us up here.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Did I put a motion on the floor?
You put a motion. Would you like to withdraw that motion?
Yes, I do.
All right.
Okay.
Why don't you make a motion?
I think I would make a motion to accept easement, or recommend easement alternative 1.
I'll second that.
Okay, vote, please.
Aye?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the ASOS alternative. So this is no action, which would essentially, presuming a full build-out of hangars, remove the ASOS from the airport. But this allows, again, similar to the easement, it allows the commission the opportunity in the future to relocate that ASOS if necessary. So not committing that you need to, but giving you the option.
Yeah, that's simple. It has no effect. We're gonna
It's a no-brainer.
motion for alternative 1 to relocate. Yeah. So a motion on the floor to relocate the
Second.
Second.
alternative 1.
Yeah.
We all second.
A motion in 3 seconds, I think that.
Vote 4-0.
Perfect. And that rounds out the voting on the alternatives, Gail will revise the chapter to reflect these votes. And then the final vote that I would ask for this evening would be to vote to allow Gale Associates to forward Chapter 6 to FAA and Mass DOT after these recommendations are included in the chapter.
I'll make that motion.
All right, so we're not going to see, oh, we will see that individually, Chapter 6, prior to it going to the FAA?
I can certainly send it back to you, Commissioner Raymond, yes.
In the interest of keeping the process moving forward, does it hurt to send it to the FAA and Mass DOT for concurrent review? Or would you guys mind if it was sent to Mass DOT and FAA for concurrent review?
We pretty much know what's involved, I think.
So basically, you're just,
Keep it moving.
I would hate to
pinpointing
wait,
the alternatives, we just,
I would hate to wait another
Motioned
month
on.
to then get approval
think
to
we-
send something
I
that
think
you've
we
already
need to
seen,
move
yeah.
it.
yeah,
Move it forward.
okay. Beth, you had a motion?
I made a motion
To accept 6 with the changes we,
right, and send it off. Yep.
yeah, okay, I'll second that motion. Are we in, vote, please?
What's on the agenda? I should probably be-
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question, please.
Go ahead, Peter.
ASOS Alternative 1, the position that's in, that negates some of the area that's going to take away from the solar farm. Is it-
Possibly,
But it doesn't
Possibly.
have to.
I'm confident it will.
yeah.
Because it's going to be outside the fence, isn't it?
The problem is with the ASOS is you have these protected surfaces around it, and you
Right.
see the radius on it, they're huge.
Right.
So the problem with leaving it in its existing location, if you start constructing hangars, is the buildings start actually interfering with the readings.
They do.
Which makes your ASOS, not useless, but it doesn't give you accurate readings to the pilot on temperature, weather, dew point and all of that stuff, so.
Agreed. So,
Yep.
so just a question.
Yep.
Could it be positioned on the left-hand side of 02 instead of the right-hand side of 02? Because there's a lot of space out there, there's no buildings there. I appreciate that the electrical side, the circuits that come underneath the runway will have to be extended to get to the ASOS, but is that feasible? Because then we've still got the same area for the solar farm.
So you're talking same side as it is right now on runway 1432, as proposed, just on the other
But
side of.
on the
Yeah.
left-hand side,
It's definitely,
02.
it's definitely possible. And again, it's not cast in stone that that is going to be the exact location for it. We could take another look at it and see if it makes sense over there. I do know that there is higher terrain going up to those neighborhoods where the apartments and stuff are. So now you're talking about, terrain and a hill that actually has potential effect on the readings of the ASOS. That's why we put it in the location we put it in.
it is, but it's quite a distance there, Matt, in all honesty. I'd say you were at least 600 feet, maybe 900 feet from, if you go right to the left-hand side of 02, just next to it,
Yeah?
then, that's a nice position for it to be, and it's away from everything. And that's a flat plain where 02 goes down, and all the way along that area, until it gets to the river. Look, it's just a suggestion, it's just a comment. But at least it would give us the full area for the solar farm that's going to generate the money. Just a thought, just a
So
thought.
we voted to move it. We just don't know where.
But
Yeah.
this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to put it exactly in this
Correct.
place. As things develop, you could,
Well, how big is this thing?
if it makes
Well, it's
sense to
the-
put it,
it's the
to move it,
radar,
you could
it's
do that at
That is
that time.
correct. Yeah, I would suggest when you get these 9 hangar owners that start
What's in
breaking
its way,
ground
yeah.
and push comes to shove and that
Here,
ASOS
here,
needs to
it's
be
almost that
relocated,
mountain or hill
we could take a
Yeah,
closer
I
look
guess
at what makes sense
Right.
for that. But the point is, we're voting to move that thing out of the way of hangars
No,
so that you can
absolutely.
develop hangars.
Absolutely.
All right.
It was just a comment. Thank you.
All right,
Anything else?
is that complete for Gail? A few more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you
Thanks,
for that
Matt.
succinct report. Thank you so much.
All right, we're going to move on to item 4, which is Fitchburg Pilots Association. Any updates as far as Peter is concerned?
I can actually comment. Richard Gersh actually asked, for the contact and the registration, which I sent to him, and I understand he's watching tonight.
Okay.
He said he didn't have anything to say other than that basically they're working hard for next month, April the 24th, for the Wings and Wheels to take place.
Okay.
Richard, thank you for attending. We appreciate it. Item 5, new business, FPA Co-op.
That was requested by Attorney Pusateri to go on to the agenda, but it's going to be discussed in the executive session.
Okay, we're going to have an executive session at the end of this meeting. New business, Commission Secretary. That was my addition. So, Commission Secretary is now held by David Genesi. He came to me a couple months ago, let me know that he does not have the time and can't put the commitment into the secretary position, in particular, the meeting minutes. I understand fully. It's a lot of work. It's 3 or 4 hours of regurgitating everything we said tonight and putting it down on paper.
And more.
And getting some feedback and changing accordingly, and I understand it's a lot of work. So it is my hope that a commissioner would take on the secretary position and do the minutes, because it helps to reinforce what goes on at the meetings, and it just it makes for a well-informed commissioner. So we need to discuss amongst ourselves who may have time to do this secretary position. And if anybody wants to volunteer, I'm all ears. If we don't have a volunteer for a secretary commission, I really don't know the procedure to move forward for that, but I am, as chair, looking for someone that can dedicate some time to the secretary position. So, is there anyone here that would like to volunteer for the secretary position on the Fitchburg Airport Commission? No, maybe I think my hearing aids need to be turned up. I don't hear anything.
No.
Come on, guys, I did it for 6 years.
I did it for 4.
I don't have time.
You have an open,
I'll tell you right
you have an
now.
open position, right, on the commission?
Yeah, we do.
Well, so we'll have to we'll have to convince someone to take the position and make that part of the job.
Yep.
Or,
Again, it's not simply the minutes. We need a secretary, we need things to be in order, and
We have to have one officially
It's,
because they sign documents.
probably part of
Right,
it,
they
yeah.
sign
And they do
documents
sign documents
for the
with the
FAA and MassDOT.
FAA, so forth and so on, so. I'm a firm believer that the secretary position is also the note taker and meeting minutes. Like I said, it just develops into a stronger commissioner for hopefully chair position someday, so. We're gonna,
well, who's doing it now, tonight?
the minutes,
Yeah,
nobody.
nobody. Well, you don't do it tonight, what do you, it's recorded and then you have to sit down and transcribe it,
Yes.
okay?
I mean, we are 2 months behind now, partly my fault, because
I'm
I
not
didn't bring this
volunteering,
issue up 2 months ago.
Can I make an inquiry?
Yes, you can.
We have the smartest guy in the room, and I was just going to ask if Tom knows off the top of his head, can you upload an audio file to our minutes on the Agenda Center?
Your hopes up after what Attorney Terry just said. I'm sure we could figure something out. I know Zoom has a transcription feature. We have a go-to meeting for our planning board meetings, and we just transcribe the meeting through that. It spits it out in a Word document, and then we edit it accordingly.
Wow, high tech. How accurate is that? Is that, you still got to read through it and clean it?
It calls Fitchburg, Pittsburgh quite often. That's a fine in a place, but it learns over time. It's something.
And you can you can make that into a actual hard copy document?
It transcribes it into a Word, but that's a different platform. But
All
I
right.
imagine there's some sort of feature similar in
Yeah, it could simplify it. I mean, right now, you know, by having this on television, we just go back to the week
Yeah.
and listen and jot down. And again, you know, if you read the bylaws in the state, they're really like, well, we don't really need a whole lot of information. We just need the motions. We need to know who was there and when and where, and move on. The commission has been using it as a document that carries through from week to week, so we can just don't lose a whole month of chit-chat. It just goes to waste if we don't follow through on the following month's action items, if you will.
Exactly.
So, I guess what I'm saying is if the letter of the law means you know, it can be very brief and very light outline, but it just, it leaves too many gray areas for the following month. Therefore, we've been, you know, quite detailed in the minutes for the last 10 years. And
I
it's
think you ought
worked.
to take this up in executive session. That's what I think. I'm serious.
Well,
Because you
do
can't
it
really,
tonight.
I can't really say what I'd like to say. No.
So, I'm gonna leave this open.
Well, Tom, I mean, that proposal, having it Zoom and all, whatever the heck that is, that wouldn't solve this problem?
I mean, it's not gonna be word for word. You're gonna hear me go back and forth. You're gonna hear other people go back and forth. They're gonna,
Okay.
Fitchburg's gonna be Pittsburgh. You're gonna have to
Something that,
go.
if you want to dig out the information.
Well, you
because
have to
there's a-
dig out the information.
Because there's a reason. No, I'm just saying, there's the document, that's it. The work's done. I mean, you gotta, still gotta go in there. Could you do that?
efficiency for somebody.
I mean, it's not, you're not, the level of work isn't to that extent, so maybe you can take a couple of minutes to go and tweak it, or whatever, right? Until we
Again,
come up with something
I
better.
would like to try to get a commissioner to do this first before we go and ask a city employee to, you know,
You make it part of the job. I don't know, I mean, look, what's the alternative? No one's doing it.
We make a
Stepping
vote.
up.
We
I don't
vote.
blame them.
We make a name and we vote on it. And if it's,
Well, you know, the other thing I was thinking was, everyone does a certain amount of time. It's penance. You know what I mean?
Good
You do
timing.
6 months or a year, and then the next guy, whether you like it or not, you're in line, the next,
yeah.
go on, so on and so forth. I don't know, I mean,
I'd like to table this because it's a big commitment to make,
Yeah.
make a decision in 5 minutes.
I think we should take Tom's suggestion.
yeah.
And then you could take turns editing it. All you have to do is make sure it doesn't say Pittsburgh instead of Fitchburg, and,
Yeah, and you gotta label the votes as
yeah.
month, year, and
Well, that's a lot easier
You can
than,
endorse that dictated and not read, or, you know, just with the
Yeah,
quick
right.
clean through, and
yeah.
at
I
least
think
you
it's a
have a
great
document.
solution.
And see if that shortens up the, you know,
Yeah.
if you can do that and it takes less than an hour, that'd be terrific.
I think even Dave might consider doing that. I'm kidding.
I would have to get Dave's opinion on that. All right, we're gonna table this. We're gonna find a way to get these 3 months' minutes written down. I can certainly do How about we all take a little turn? I'll do a month, someone does a month, and someone else does another month.
Well, I was already in the middle of doing January's when I was told that there was an alternative in place.
Yeah.
So I have January's pretty much done. I just have to kind of comb through it a little bit more.
Yeah?
So I can square away January, seeing that I have a draft sitting.
Perfect. How about,
And I think we need to revisit this in executive session at the next commission meeting rather than on the regular agenda, is my opinion.
I agree.
I will do February. Anyone, any takers for March?
Yeah, Rich.
Rich Liberatore?
Yeah, of course.
You're jumping right in there.
Let's vote.
You got so much, I know you're busy because, you're retired now and.
Yeah, I retired to retire.
March will be fresh in your head, it'll be easy.
I know what you've been doing all this time, growing a beard, but other than that, I mean,
I have no hobbies.
oh, okay, all right.
Oh, you got one now. Rich, will you do March?
I'll do much.
Thank you. Let's move on because it's getting late. Old business. Mass Development Site Readiness, Airport Land. Tom,
Skorsky.
S. Tom S. it says here. Mary Jo B. Bohart.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tom Skorowski, expert on meeting transcription, here with Mary Jo Bohart, Economic Development Director. I believe you were briefed on the project by Mary Jo last month and a few months previous. I would just add, what the folks developing the master plan had mentioned, the nitty-gritty of developing, where the utilities, where access points are, what the development of whether aeronautical or non-aeronautical use looks like. I think that is really the nitty-gritty we hope to get into as part of this project. And I think what we're looking to do is really seek to begin this scope of work with Mass Development, with VHB, and some of our other consultants we're working with. So we're really seeking from the Commission authorization to begin that work. So I know there was some discussion last month. Happy to continue it with regard to scope or any other questions or feedback you might have tonight. Mary Jo, I don't know if you have more to add.
And what I can do is refresh memory a little bit, because since you last met, I think at the last meeting, I gave sort of bulleted, outlined ideas. Keep in mind, the notion of the scope of work for mass development is to fill informational gaps that will help you all with your decision-making as you go forward. And so one thing which is typically fundamental of all site readiness projects is more of a planner's kind of an opportunities constraints analysis, but part of what that will look at is certainly environmental constraints, infrastructure existing, those kinds of things. So just answering those kinds of questions. Granted, a lot of it might be referenced in the airport master plan, but in a slightly different way. Now it's kind of looking at it, kind of thinking of what it would take to redevelop those areas for aviation and non-aviation related use. Another point which seemed like it would be very helpful for you all, and this is more of a economic kind of market-based type of analysis, would be the development strategy. That might be how you weigh different options when it comes to some of those long-term land leases, this one versus that one. So on the disposition of the property, a disposition strategy perhaps. And then there were a few points that Rich actually had shared via an email, and they were good ones. Templates, and these might be real estate examples, templates of ground leases, both for aeronautic uses and non-aeronautic uses. You're not the first ones to have to go down this path, and it would be great if a consultant could provide some of those examples, not that they're etched in stone, but it would really help you all as models. So that was one thought. And then I think, Rich, and I hope I'm not mischaracterizing what you meant by your suggestion, valuation of the land lease, kind of understanding what is that worth? And you think of in today's dollars, but since these are long-term land leases, you think of maybe it's a net present value, or I don't know what, but that type of thinking over the long haul could be very valuable, and I don't imagine you've had the opportunity yet to think like that, but those are big decisions, and when you make those decisions, you'll want to understand kind of the long-range implications. So anyway, with the feedback that Rich had provided and those early-stage bullets that I shared last month with you, just today, I got an early-stage draft, not really ready to share with you all what a scope could look like. It came from one of the consultants called VHB, who is likely going to be one of the ones that would work on the project. The way Mass Development operates, they have sort of a suite of different consultants in different subject areas. VHB is much more land planning and that sort of thing. The economic analysis, that real estate type stuff, probably will be a slightly different consultant. But anyway, my intent today, rather than saying, here's the scope, what do you think, was to kind of talk on those general themes, talk about the approach. Keep in mind, this scope is to serve you all, but also to answer questions that you're likely going to have as you start repurposing some of those lands. So I don't know if that sounds like what you were thinking. And then time frame was another thing that you were asking about at the tail end of last meeting. I did ask Ed Starzak of Mass Development. Here we are, kind of mid-March. Realistically, how quickly could this scope get firmed up with you all and get going with the work? And he seemed to feel that by mid-April would be reasonable. Because what I got this afternoon, I just didn't feel comfortable giving it to you because I wasn't sure. What I'd like to do is make sure that it isn't just these items, which is approximately half of the grant funding, but also those real estate financial items, because this is more the land use planning kind of stuff. So I want to make sure that when you see the scope, it's reflective of both of them and the full grant amount.
All right, thank you, Mary Jo. So if I could just give you examples of what happens at the airport, and maybe you can help us determine what is most needed. But what happened last year is interested jet owner wanted to build a hangar on airport property near an existing ramp. But he wanted to spend the money, he wanted to build a hangar before Christmas, and it was already Columbus Day. So he wanted to see what the lease looked like. He wanted to know how much the lease was, and he wanted to know where and how much the utilities was going to cost him to bring to the hangar. We didn't have really an answer for any of those items, and the year went by. Another thing for like non-aeronautical land, I can envision the airport putting out an RFP for 14 acres up on top of the hill on Crawford Street. They're going to want to know where the gas is, where the water is, what kind of electricity we can bring to them, and what the dollar amount is for that, what we're hoping to get or exceed, and what that lease might look like. So those would be the immediate concerns for the airport, and I would like to see come out of this grant is, like I say, some kind of a template or somehow to move forward to give them those answers. And same with the development of hangars. The city, I don't know if it was the mayor or the solicitor, asked, well, how much would that infrastructure cost? Well, we're hoping $250,000 is going to bring, water storage, and electric, and internet, or what have you, into that area. But we don't really know. We believe it's 300 feet away, but it could be 1,000. And those are important questions because you can't have a guy put the hangar up and then the city balk because we need $700,000 to bring water, sewer, and what have you to him.
I think what I'm hearing is unknowns, both on the side of the commissioners and also on the side of any interested parties. To the degree that those types of things, I granted they will be estimates, ballpark, whatever, but until you have estimates, ballpark, whatever type figures, those types of unknowns will make it very challenging, both for you to make decisions or for the outside
it
parties
impossible.
to want to do something. And so it puts you all at a disadvantage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Please, anyone that would like to talk a little bit about this grant funding. Again, this grant funding is very flexible. They're allowing us to get to our goal. The purpose is development. It doesn't have to be non-aeronautical development. It can be aeronautical development as well. Correct?
Yes, yes, because it basically, economic development isn't just for one type of use, you know.
Yeah.
That aeronautic uses that are supportive of the airport, but they're still uses, they're businesses and ventures and things, so,
Even the airport restaurant, there's some logistics there before any egg gets fried. There's a lot that needs to go into it that's expensive.
So it's not,
And
you're not funding the project, the grant goes towards the exploration of the project that we're heading for.
exactly. So this type of program that the state has is not build a restaurant program, it's called site readiness. It's making sure that your site is ready for all the different things
Right.
that you want to have happen there, so that when you make your decisions with the parties that you're deciding with, you're getting a good deal, they're getting a good deal, you feel confident, you understand how this is going to play out over the years, all of that sort of thing. So I don't want to disappoint, but I have to be honest, this type of grant doesn't build a restaurant.
But I think what it does do, in addition to the opportunities and constraints analysis, taking a look at the market, it also, by developing the best disposition strategy, I think, as public sector entities, sometimes the disposition of property isn't something we do well, and ourselves included. I think we've recently begun to become a lot more familiar with disposing of property through the RFP process, just through my department, and we've learned a lot of really important lessons over the last few years about how to most effectively do that. It looks a little bit different than one would if they were just a private landowner trying to sell a piece of property. But there are certain ways you can do it that are very effective. There are other ways that, whether us as a municipality or other cities have done it, that aren't effective at all. It's just posting it up on a website and hoping and praying that somebody takes a look at the pad site and builds a restaurant there. I think it will help aid in our competitiveness in the way that we get it out into the field, so we get the most competitive offers as well.
So this is going to then give us an opportunity to look at projects that we have coming up and see how they fit with other projects to sort of leverage all of those together, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's.
You could
that's
also, yes, and you could also phasing,
Right.
can't do everything all at once, or maybe you can, but what would that entail?
Right.
And if things were phased, what's the most logical way for that to occur? And there's probably several different ways something could happen, but just thinking through how that might go and what might be the financial implications of it going this way versus that way.
So it would avoid us making a decision to do A, and then if we do A, it prevents us from doing C down the road, B and C down the road, if that's what we have in mind.
Right,
Right? Okay.
Right. So what I have is I'll call it an extremely rough version of a scope of work. Like I said, it doesn't reflect some of what I'm probably personally most interested in, is sort of that fiscal analysis or the economic real estate kind of analysis, templates, things like that. That wasn't a part of what VHB was going to be doing. It's a separate consultant also under Mass Development would do that. Because that's not necessarily on this scope, but Mass Development's aware that that's something that you all are very interested in. I want to make sure that the scope includes those types of things too. So this is, I'll call it a partial draft. If it was more complete and it was hitting all the marks, then I'd probably want you all to look at it and kind of feel good about it. I guess the question is, because you all meet monthly, and I imagine you'd be interested in getting going with some of this sooner if you could. Is the spirit of the type of scope items that we've discussed both at the last meeting and again at this meeting, is that kind of covering what you had in mind, or is there anything that hasn't been addressed that you think should be?
Well, again, to put it in what's actually happening is, people will come down to Peter and say, hey, is that land up there available? Peter's like, yeah, someday it will be. How much land? How much is it, you know, I understand an airport master plan has to be in place, but even if it was in place now and that property was available for non-aeronautical use, we have no clue what to tell that potential developer. And I don't know, do they
So sort of a
normally go to City Hall
methodology
and say,
of
"Hey, that
fielding
property's
inquiries,
available, what, you know, what size gas line is it?" I don't know, you know, I don't know how they approach it. Maybe they fund all that stuff from the street to the building, whereas on airport property, it's not so simple.
Got it.
And again, you know, people want to build hangars, and, you know, unlike the regular world, if somebody builds a building in downtown Fitchburg, they buy the land, the building's there for in perpetuity, you know? On the airport, it's not that way. It's a fixed amount of time,
And,
lease on that land.
right, and I do think it's worth noting the folks both at Mass Development and VHB within their respective organizations, they have a lot of experience working in airports as well, municipal airports, as well as, you know, all the way up to Logan. So they're able to figure out some of those questions as well as to
Yeah.
how those long-term land leases work and what would be most competitive for the commission.
Thank you. Peter, do you have any immediate needs that would come under this grant scope?
No, to be honest, I think we've covered everything.
Yeah.
I really do. But I think the most important point of it all is, you know, the utilities.
Yep.
Because you can't build anything unless you know what's there.
Right.
So,
And it's the first question that get asked, whether you're being asked by the developer or being asked by city. You know, and then we haven't even taken it to city council yet. You know, we need $800,000 for this building. They're gonna say, well, geez, what is the building gonna do for us, you know?
Sure.
And is $800,000 enough?
And/or is it more cost-effective for the private sector to come in and do it and have that be reflected on the deal that you make with them, right?
Correct.
So,
And right now, we have no way to answer that question.
right,
Yeah,
and I think this would address that,
yeah.
we hope.
I think so too.
David, any comment, or anyone else?
No, I apologize, I missed the first part of your presentation, but there's no other areas of interest I think we need to discuss.
Yeah.
So what I can do, if it's okay with you all, since we've talked informally about scope items for a couple of meetings now, is kind of cull things together, kind of more refining it. Nothing will be different than anything we've already kind of brought up.
Yeah.
But what I want to do, rather than wait 30 days until your next meeting, is give back to you kind of a summary of what we've talked about. I did it once, but now it's maybe a little bit more refined. And then I'll be checking in with our contact at Mass Development probably tomorrow or the next day, just to report back on kind of your thoughts and so on. But just expressing to him that there's a desire to get going, you know, and you know, you probably, I'm guessing, would like to get started with some of this type of work as soon as you can.
Yeah.
So that the answers that you hope to get from it will be at your disposal sooner rather than later.
Right. No,
Okay.
I don't think you need a public group vote for the scope of work that you present the scope of work to Peter. If any of us want to see that scope of work, we know to go get it from Peter in the next, let's say, 10 days, and that's fine with.
That sounds good. One more thing. The grant award was for $100,000, and the way Mass Development does these, we're not getting cash, we're getting the services, they're procuring the consultants on our behalf, whatever. But it's up to. So right now, this first chunk of tasks that VHB gave a quote on was about $49,000, meaning there's a heck of a lot more left.
Yeah.
The reason I mention that is, as we get into the work, it may open your eyes to a bunch of things that are like, gosh, it would really help if we could get a little analysis of this or that. So the scope can evolve a little bit if there's an item that maybe it's all under the same umbrella, but if some particular task comes up as we're getting into the work and you think, gosh, it would be so great if the consultant could analyze this for us. We have the
Again, I think
flexibility of
that
adding in.
discretionary spending could, also go through the airport manager. I mean, he's the one on the ground fielding all these calls and inquiries.
Okay.
We hear about them secondhand, but it's Peter, the airport manager, that is the point of contact for all of that.
That makes sense. And the reason I mention that, in our prior experience with site readiness, one of the latter tasks, as the full grant amount hadn't been totally expended, ended up being a conceptual roadway layout, an access road,
Yep.
I'm not suggesting that's necessarily what you'll want, but
It
this might
can-
reveal, gosh, wouldn't it be nice
Right.
to have a conceptual layout of what the road
Yeah.
access point might look like, something like that. So those types of things are all within what would be fair game.
Yeah, if there's room for that to evolve, I think that's a good thing.
Sounds good.
Peter, would you mind, when you get that from Mary Jo, would you mind just forwarding it to the?
No, not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
That concludes old business, item A. We're going to item B, door for lobby. That would be Peter Kittle.
The J&R Glass are doing that, and we've been given a time of 12 weeks to get it installed.
Yeah. That's in process. We voted yes, right?
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
It hasn't started yet.
No, it started. The procurement process has started. It's all been approved. The price was $9,800. And, we're waiting 12 weeks now. They came in today to get a sample of the material because they're going to match it absolutely perfectly. So it's on the go. And so within 12 weeks, we should actually have them commencing. So
Thank you, Peter. Okay, item C, very big item, R4102A and R4102B, concerning the hotspot over there at the Devons on the 3-2 approach. So go ahead, Peter.
Well, the first meeting was held here where the commander, Lieutenant Colonel Colstock, came here with his crew, and they invited us back, and the mayor, Tony Pusateri, Natalia Oliver, the chief of staff to the mayor, Debbie and myself visited them last Friday, had an excellent meeting, and we came up with a plan. And the plan really meant a lot of talking with certain people to actually establish a procedure in order to get through that restricted area, which really is unheard of in the whole of North America. There's no other military establishment that allows that to happen. So somehow the team has developed this relationship with them to allow this to happen. So basically the agreement was, because the LPV is being issued on the 24th of March, we said we'd go 6 weeks after that LPV, and the planes that are going to be able to fly through there are turboprop and jets. So on May the 5th, we're going to have another meeting with them to see what needs to be modified, if anything can be modified. So it's really positive for the people that want to build these hangars as well, because they've now got approval. It takes a little bit of work, but, we've got phone numbers, and they've also got a special frequency to contact them on. So it was a very good meeting, I thought, and then they took us around and showed us the range. What did you think, Attorney Pusateri?
I think the level of collaboration that was going on in that room was definitely remarkable.
Yeah.
And I think Peter has really spearheaded the whole process. It started with the donuts here in this room. They didn't offer us anything when we went there, although I have to say I'm very impressed with Lieutenant Colonel Colstock. I mean, he is absolutely supportive. They have a mission there, too. They're trying to train, the various branches of the armed forces and local police and state police, and they're trying to grow their facility. And in light of all of that, they're still able to find a way to accommodate our concerns. So it was very reassuring.
Yeah, that's very good. So has any of it been implemented that's helped to this, at this point?
We've had a couple of,
Has any of it been implemented? Is it already, is some of it implemented?
Oh, yeah,
now?
it's all implemented.
And it's working?
Yeah. Yeah,
it's not been fully implemented. I think we've got more progress that we identified some more action items in our last meeting, but you've had planes able to fly through that no-fly
already.
already.
And I've already sent emails out to all the corporate planes that fly in, and there's 17 of those, and also sent out to the 7 to 9 people that want to build 7 to 9 hangars.
And there was a goal of trying to post something on the chart?
Yes, Debbie's looking at that on the NOTAM.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing really that's outstanding.
That's the big key. If we can get that done, so on the chart, when the pilots look at the chart, they see, don't fly through here. Peter calls it NOTAM. To me, I have to simplify these things. And what we want them to say is, call, right? Or I guess we don't call when you're in the airplane, but contact.
Yeah, communicate.
Contact somebody. And then, because many times they're able to fly through there, so.
No, that's excellent. Thank you, Peter. That was a lot of work.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Good results. And not just the 7 to 9 airplanes, we're talking all future growth and development at the airport.
Right.
It's going to need that help,
Yeah.
so it's great. Thank you.
I think we should-
Item D,
maybe the
tie downs,
Commissioner,
FPA co-op.
Mr. Chair, maybe you could take some type of formal action and reach out and provide some thank you or gratitude towards the folks
Yeah,
at Devon's.
great idea.
Particularly Lieutenant Colonel Kolstack.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Okay, back to item D, tie downs, FPA co-op. I think that's old business that needs to be addressed tonight in an executive session.
Exactly.
No problem. RFP 7 to 9 hangars. I don't know that there's been any action. Peter,
Yeah,
anything
there
on that?
has, there has.
Okay.
There was a meeting, and the meeting ended, and people went away to think, and Mr. Sheffels actually called me today, asking when the next meeting's going to be.
Okay.
So, and that, I will send you the details, Attorney Busuttil.
When the next meeting will be?
Yes, to continue the discussions.
I think we're at a point where we've got to sit down and read that lease and just go through it one more time. I don't see a way around it. It's just going to be I just don't know how I'm going to touch it between now and get some court coming up, so.
Right. Well, what I did do today, again, I asked Mr. Sheffels to put down what he believes was agreed already, which will give us a good starting point, I believe.
Okay.
Did you have the opportunity to X out the parts that should have been X'd out prior to the meeting?
That was the first meeting.
Yes.
That was prior to that. There was a couple of things that weren't, but that's why I've asked Mr. Sheffels to put down what he
Okay,
believes.
just to reiterate, and then
Exactly.
you're going to...
Exactly.
So, Solicitor Pusateri, the commission, or not the commission, but the airport manager can make changes to that lease by himself.
I've sent him, I think he has the Word document.
Yeah?
I gave him a PDF and a Word document.
Okay,
Peter, do you have the Word document?
I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
But we're going to talk more about some of the things, because we have a very interesting lease that's going to come to us in executive session.
Yeah,
But I do understand what you're saying.
okay. In other words, we're trying to take some of the burden off you, even though
Yep.
we have to bring it back to you so that
Yep.
we stay out of trouble.
Yep, no, it's fine.
Thank you. Hangar 10, new door, that's been covered. We are still waiting.
Well, we are and we aren't.
Okay.
Because the price has gone up because of the quotation from Mackenzie Engineering, providing us with the approved engineered signed drawing.
Yeah,
It has to go back for a change order, and Mary Delaney is doing that as we speak. So hopefully we can get that out and then we can continue. It has to be signed by the mayor, the attorney, and everybody else because of the increase in the cost. So,
Oh, so you need to do a change order, is that?
yes.
Yeah. Have you circulated that yet? Have you signed that?
No, I haven't got it yet.
Okay,
I'm waiting for Mary.
okay,
So,
yeah.
okay. Item G, door for hangars 2 and 3.
we await MassDOT, and I will send an email tomorrow to Owen Silber, the principal engineer.
Yep. Item H, self-serve fuel transfer to and from truck.
Covered that a little bit earlier with Jackie.
Yep.
We await the quotation, and hopefully we should have that by Friday.
Item I, minimum standards.
You want to skip that?
Yes,
I thought you might.
yeah,
Because
Ongoing.
I await the commission.
ongoing.
All right, ongoing.
Item J,
Okay.
The Pete's Store.
No change.
no action. Convergent Energy.
No change.
Okay. Financial review, approval for commitments and abatements. There was a $200 fact abatement and a $10.21 to Allison Parent, which Peter and I have met on, and those abatements have been signed and passed on.
Yeah, can I just explain?
Yeah,
The approval of the commitments is ongoing every month.
Yeah.
We sign exactly what needs to be paid from the city. Basically, it was my error. I was charging FACT $100 more than they should have been paying. And they should have been charged $2,844.26 a month for February and March, and they were charged $2,944.26. So this abatement that was signed by the chairman and myself is to actually get that money back to them. The other one was where an aircraft was sold on the airport, and the person that bought it, because it was in between the sale and the purchase, they were charged an extra $10.21 because of the change in the increase in the price. But it shouldn't have happened. So that is just to get $10.21 back to them as well, that have both been signed. So that's good, and I will forward those tomorrow to the treasurer, and that'll be good.
Okay,
Okay? And they're the first ones we've had,
all right,
as you know.
yes.
Okay?
all right. Item G, I'm going to address it right now, but tonight there will be an executive session to discuss FPA co-op, and we'll be entering to executive session to discuss strategy with respect to litigation on that item,
And negotiation on the lease.
and a negotiation on the lease.
Yes,
Yeah. I will be asking for a motion well, I have to get a motion in public session now to enter into executive session at the end of, after we adjourn. So could I have a motion to enter into executive session, please?
So moved.
Second.
Vote yes. 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 Okay, we will adjourn at
7:59?
7:59. Next meeting, April 20th, 2022, 6 PM here. Thank you all for attending.